Lagos very well.
Great to have you here. And last but certainly not least, my learned colleague, Adedunmade Onibokun. Good morning, Adedunmade.
Good morning, guys. Good morning, Lagos.
Okay.
Nice to be here.
Yes, great to have you here. Great to have you, Lagos, and the rest of the world. Everyone listening from wherever you are, do note that you can also watch us in the studio as well as listen by going over to youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. You can also tweet at us, and I'm sure you want to. We tweeted out the headlines. Search with the hashtag freshlypressed981. You'll see the stories that are about to be discussed this morning, and you can also comment on those stories. And last but not least, don't forget to send us WhatsApp messages to 0809 444 0981.
Okay, so let's start with our first story, and I'm coming to you with this one, Deveo. It says APC panel cancels Lagos governorship primary. We talked about this earlier at the headlines. Postpones exercises from the Punch newspaper. Now, to give you details, it says here the National Working Committee panel of the All Progressive Congress sent from Abuja to monitor the party's governorship primary in Lagos has nullified the exercise held across the 20 local government areas of the state on Tuesday. Now, chairman of the panel, Mr. Clement Ibiri, who addressed the press in Alausa, Ikeja, said the election could not have held because the committee was still expecting the full list of representatives of one of the two aspirants as of 4 p.m. Deveo, what are your thoughts about this one?
As I said, the people have spoken in a way, but this seems to be a fallout that is about to be unleashed with this Lagos politics. Remember, this is just one party we're referring to, but
Yes.
APC seems to have gotten the popcorn from everyone, and we're all watching. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to participate yesterday.
You're a card-carrying member now?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, you see, for some time now, there had been some rancor within the APC, especially Lagos State, regarding this primary. And in the usual fashion that the governor gets to get a return ticket, the party had a position that they would select someone else in the person of Somolu. And prior to this time, the governor, incumbent, has been making moves in many ways to see how he can secure his position, from pleading to even speaking at a World Press Conference and laying some less than credible or characteristic claims on his opponent. However, the primaries that were meant to take place on Saturday was shifted to Sunday and then shifted again to Monday. This is the timeline. Many were not too sure what was going on, but we knew that a lot of politicking was going down behind the scene. Finally, on Monday, yesterday, between 9 and 12, accreditation started taking place in about 20 local governments and 254 wards, where they assumed the option A4 mode of electioneering, meaning that you come out in the open and you are counted.
Wow.
There were complaints from the Ambode faction that many of their own supporters were being threatened, and in some cases there was even a little violence. However, at the end of the day, the counts were made right there in front of people. Exit polls were being distributed all over, and many people saw that from that point of view, there was a landslide victory. I think it was about 900,000 votes there-ish, as against about 70-something thousand on the side of the Ambo. The agents were present from both sides in all these locations. However, the National Working Committee, this is another motley crew in the game, have come up to say that there were some irregularities and that procedures were not followed, and in some cases ballot boxes were not used because they happened to want to use the ballot box system, that they believed that some people were not given a fair opportunity to vote simply because they were afraid of being seen in the open. Now, this brings about some level of confusion, because already the APC in Lagos, that's the chairman, has stated that elections were held in the eyes of everyone, which we all know about. Now the National Working Committee is saying that they will set another date, meaning they have cancelled. So this brings us to the meat of this matter. The APC now being tested to see whether it is a credible party that can deliver elections in most of the states that it operates in.
Okay.
The tensions that have been growing is not just Lagos. Kaduna is a bit peaceful. Which state was that? That they had more problems.
Ogun State. Ogun.
Ogun. And it's apparent that they've not been able to get their act together at this time in season. We need to be careful because what we don't want is violence. Right now, when you withhold about 900,000 people's votes as against 70, my own question is, even if they take it over again, does Ambode stand a chance? And this speaks to the power of grassroots politics. At the end of the day, if you say you are desired and you have a bid or you have a passion and you believe that the people are with you, some way, somehow, that has to be proven. I don't really see how Ambode is going to twist this. In some funny appearances, even his own deputy and some of his own cabinet members stood publicly and declared their position with the party's position. These are all showing you the full lifestyle or the full position of the party. I'm happy in a way that it's democracy. I'm not happy in a way that yes, there's some things that have not been exposed, but this is more of what we want to see. Okay. It's left for people to choose. Now, I will end on this note. The PDP even shifted their own primaries. Why? Because they're tinkling on, we hear that they're tinkling on the fact that maybe if Ambo loses, he might shift over to their side and they will give him the ticket. But let's wait and see. It's getting quite interesting.
Gbolahan, you look like you have something you want to chip in on this story. Please
well, I just
ahead.
wanted to say very quickly as well to that just a few days ago we celebrated 58 years of independence, and looking at the democracy that we've been running unbroken now for over how many years now? 18 years. And we're still stuck at this as well. It's pretty much saying an old man that keeps on stumbling on the same stone over and over again. We never seem to learn. If we cannot even conduct something as simple as a primary at the moment, how are we going to conduct a national election peacefully without any issues?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gbolahan. Let's move on. Well, to you, this one here says, in a surprise move, oil prices rise towards $90 per barrel. Excuse me. This comes from the Daily Times, and well, the story goes: Asian stocks fell on Tuesday as the lift from an agreement that saved the North American free trade deal faded, with cautious views on global economy curbing risk sentiment in commodities. And the U.S. state crude futures were up on 0.4% at 7.60 a barrel.
Well, Baba will be celebrating right now at the moment now, because of course all the claims has always been the oil price has been falling, and that's the reason why this government hasn't actually been able to deliver. But now we're looking at
an increase.
An increase now. We're talking about $85 a barrel at the current moment now, and heading towards $90 a barrel. And when we look at the situation in Nigeria as well, our oil production is increased at the moment. When we had the issues in 2016 with the Niger Delta situation, the oil production fell as low as about 1.2, 1.3 million barrels, but now we're talking about 1.7 million barrels a day. So invariably, Nigeria is going to be earning a lot now from oil production at the moment. We're looking at a situation where Adesina as well, which is Total, the oil production will be coming on stream probably before the end of this year, and that's going to add another 300,000 barrels to it. So we could easily eat about 2 million barrels a day in production. So look at the amount. If we look at it, Nigeria is going to be generating quite a lot of revenue from oil at this present moment. So what this article actually talks about is, of course, the reason behind it is what's currently going on in America now. Of course, there's a lot more optimism for the global economy since the trade deal has been agreed in America. There's also the sanctions that would also be taking place as well on Iran, which will I think will be taking place in October or November or so.
Okay.
So, of course, all of this is pointing towards the direction of an increase in oil price.
Even beyond the $90?
It could possibly go beyond the $90 a barrel. Of course, if it does, we're going to be largesting once more. There's going to be a lot of party and celebration going on in the country with the government as well. But the
pain of the black man. Have we paid our bills? Have we funded our budget?
Which also leads me to this question. Now, we talked about the NLC strike a few days ago.
Yes.
Does this mean that with this new revenue that's coming in, the government might be able to meet up to the new demands from the NLC possibly, and other demands as well?
Well, they can meet up with some demands, but are they willing to? And how much are we going? Well, they can if we look at it. And the good thing about it as well is that our budget is actually benchmarked on about $56 a barrel or so. So we do have a lot of money, and we could actually save a lot as well too. And so from these savings, we can use in paying off quite a lot of our bills, offset our outstanding as well. So it's a good move for Nigeria. But the only sad bit about it is that we never seem to have learned as well. To over the years, we were talking of actually diversifying the government revenue generation from oil alone, but it seems like we're going back to the same oil, oil, oil.
And my fear is that if they don't put legislation around the ECA, we will squander it.
Devil, let me come to you quickly with this.
Yes, people on YouTube.
She was conducting a choir.
Sanctions by regulators don't discourage investments. This comes from the experts. This also comes from ThisDay newspaper. And a quick quote here. It says, the notion that sanctions on multinationals operating in Nigeria will dampen investor confidence and discourage inflow of foreign direct investment has been defaulted by an economist. This is Mr. Gbolahan Adenuga, who has called on the regulators to continue to punish rule breakers. And I think the consensus here is that, or the word here is that it seems as though if these regulators are punished, it seems they will take their investments to another country or back to wherever they're coming from generally. What are your thoughts, Steve?
Well, punish is actually the wrong word. I think it gives a wrong impression as to what is happening. This speaks about the rule of law, jurisdiction and enforcement, and corporate governance. Now, the article talks about how some have been pushing a perception that foreign investors may be discouraged because of how, in the recent case where the CBN sanctioned about 5 banks and also MTN for illegal repatriation of funds, about to the tune of $8.1 billion. And many were saying that, if this continues happening, that we're going to lose out on the FDI side, which we actually do need. Now, the managing partner of Adedunmade Associates was pushing his position that no, on the contrary, this position actually is a indicator of how the regulator should perform. That in other climes, nobody disputes when regulators take a position where you have defaulted or fallen short. And we've seen that in many cases. Like in this case, Standard Chartered is facing another $1.5 billion sanction from the United States for allowing customers to violate some of the sanctions that were put with the Iran sanctions that came forth. Now, the same Standard Chartered did face same sanctions from the CBN in the latest MTN issue. Now, if you go back, it's not the first time that we've had sanctions within this polity. MTN itself faced sanctions with the federal government some time ago, where it had to do with unregistered SIM cards. And I think they charged them about $200,000 per SIM. So most people thought that the government was being very unfair. Actually, it was an amount that was agreed amongst the operators, and it's because they had a larger amount of unregistered cards. That's why they were hit with such a high volume. So, like I said, it's all about corporate governance. It's about the rule of law and enforcement. And we do agree that players maintain their positions whenever corporates default.
Okay, real quick, we'll come back to Gbolahan with this one. Federal government increases gas flare penalty from 10 naira to 613. This comes from the Punch newspaper, and they're saying that it's been increased. They're saying basically it's 10 naira per 1,000 standard cubic feet of gas to $2 or 602.8 as at the official exchange rate, basically.
Yes. Well, the Minister of State for Petroleum, Ibekachuku, had been talking about this for quite a while now, that we're going to be looking at sanctioning heavily those who flare a lot of gas while producing oil or so. And if you go to the Niger Delta region, especially the Port Harcourt area, you will find out that there's a lot of pollution in the air, and people have been complaining so much about the environment as well. There's a lot of gas flaring going on over there. And when we look at it, gas isn't exactly a waste or so. It's something that could be used. In fact, Nigeria needs the gas as well in terms of powering our electricity at the moment. But the problem that we have is that there's not a lot of gas pipelines that has been channeled through in order for us to get the gases to the generating companies and then be able to power our generating sets. So right now, at the moment, it's a good initiative that the government is actually doing where they've increased the penalties from 10 naira. If you look at the 10 naira, a lot of these IOCs can afford 10 naira easily per 1,000 standard cubic feet of gas. But it's now actually been increased to 612 naira 80 kobo, which is the equivalent of about $2 or so. And when we look at it as well, what's the international gas price? It's about $3 or so. We can also generate money from actually supplying and selling gas, which we do, which through the NLNG. We do, but we're not doing enough of it. We're wasting quite a significant amount of gas just flaring it or so. So it makes perfect sense to do this. And what they're actually looking at is for those that are producing more than 10,000 barrels of oil, oil a day, are the ones that are actually going to be paying this fine. For those that are producing less than 10,000 barrels, you'll be looking at paying about 50 cents per 1,000 cubic feet of gas. So it makes a lot of sense. The only issue I have with this is that I just hope that the regulatory agencies, which is the DPR, are actually going to be monitoring this effectively, because we know how our regulators are. They're not so good at monitoring and being effective.
Okay, thanks. In the interest of time, let's move speedily on. We've got this next story in from the Daily Times. Court throws out the Inspector General of Police's suit, says the Senate does have the power to summon him. So the court under Justice, the Federal High Court in Abuja, under Justice John Soho, basically struck out in his judgment, saying that the IGP suit constituted an abuse of court process, and it also went on to agree that arguments canvassed by the defendants and the suit as filed by the IGP is sub judice. Please explain this to us, Adedunmade. We're very curious, especially considering that there is a second suit as well, that Justice Soho has also asked to be sent back to the Chief Judge for reassignment, because he says it's too similar to what he's just ruled on.
Okay. I'm going to start with the word sub judice and what it means to people who are non-lawyers. When a matter is before a court, it is determined to be sub judice, because that means that the matter can no longer be deliberated on by the public, and the court now has full jurisdiction to hear it and determine it as the case may be. Now, that being said, I'm going to go back to the reason for the suit in the first place. You see, I find it very funny that the IGP and his counsel who holds the position that states that the National Assembly does not have powers to oversee the IGP. Now, what they did not technically say oversee. What they meant is that the Senate cannot call him directly, and he has to be there personally, because he had already designated that the role to another younger person, which is I think
to his
an
deputy,
assistant. Yeah, the deputy IG. And the court has struck out that suit, and I feel very, very good about that, and I side with the courts. The reason is, I don't know why here in this country we believe that personalities are more important than institutions. Now, I believe that there is no way in any sane democracy that the Inspector General of Police will say that he will not submit himself to the authority of the National Assembly, which is actually vested with the authority to speak for the people. That is very bad. Now, I will also say that this shows the signs of the leadership process that is being done in Nigeria. Now, for instance, when the president was before the NBA at the annual general conference, he stated that the executive has powers to what he calls suspend the rights of a person, even though the courts have said that they are the ones that have that power, which is actually very, very wrong.
That was not exactly what he said. He said that sometimes the rights of the individual should be set aside in the interests of the nation.
Yes, we agree there's a court decision to that effect.
Okay.
But what he failed to add, and what he was insinuating, is that he is the one, or the executive is the one, or the agents of the executive are the people that have the power to determine what is and what not, which is actually very, very wrong. The courts have the power to do that. Now, furthermore, the police has said that they will not come before the National Assembly. So the police IGP has said that he will not come before the National Assembly. And also, the police have been known to not obey court orders in the past. So if he cannot go before the National Assembly, and if the police will not obey the court orders, then tell me who has control over the Nigerian police.
Questions. Thank you very much for that, Adedunmade. Gbolahan, coming back to you now for this story. Rather interesting. Actually, yes, come back to you for this story. Nigeria's poor rating on corruption is a low mark for citizens, not the government, says the president's. The special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina, saying that Transparency International's corruption perception index that saw Nigeria drop from 136 in 2016 to 148. It was, well, the ranking is really about Nigeria. It's not about the federal government. So, the people have some blame in this.
Well, absolutely, Folu. We're actually to blame for this. We should have actually been going and arresting people and charging them to court as well too for they're never to blame for anything. It's always as a
Before we move on, I'm very curious. It is strange that the media advisor seems to be throwing people the bus. My question is he incorrect in saying that Nigerians have a share in how we're perceived in terms of corruption across the globe?
Well, he does to some extent, but for him to actually say that the government really isn't to blame, because if you're looking
he
at,
doesn't say the government isn't to blame. He said we share the blame.
when you're talking about sharing the blame, I think actually the leadership and setting example starts from the top. So if you're exonerating yourself from blame, then you're not actually solving the problem, and you're actually saying you should actually take the responsibility wholeheartedly
And not make such statements. Thank you very much. I appreciate hearing from you on that. Adedunmade, let's go over to this next one. Duke, Ghana, and 3 others SDP presidential ticket. Imagine my excitement seeing another political party being mentioned in the newspapers. So we're talking about the Social Democratic Party. They are to participate in the party's presidential primary. It's slated for the 6th of October in Abuja. That is this Saturday. The aspirants include former governor of Cross River State, Mr. Donald Duke, former information minister, Professor Jerry Gana, Dr. John Dara, and Professor Haga Iyose, and Ambassador Felix Osakwe. Your thoughts on this primary and looking at what's arguably some people may call, are they not fresh faces? I mean, that's a stretch.
Professor Jerry Gana, fresh face. Wow. I cannot remember when I did not hear his name in politics. He has always been there since I can remember. Now, the thing is that I'm not so happy with what I'm seeing here, because Donald Duke left the PDP a few months ago for the SDP. And I believe that they have so bastardized the issue of political parties that they have now become SPVs, and actually not any particular, not parties based on any, should I say, credible ideas
or ideologies.
It's actually very, very sad that we've come to this point as a nation. But that being said, this season is about a show and tell. For instance, now for political parties and for politicians, when your party does not give you what you want, you go to the other party where you've already negotiated that they are going to give you what you want, and you use that as a leverage point to show your party that you just left that, oh, I have clout too.
Okay.
So I believe this is what Donald Duke is trying to do with the SDP.
So my question is for these people, just for time reasons, because we literally have 3 minutes to get to 2 more stories. Do you believe that these are serious contenders? Do you think they have a real shot at the presidency? No. Okay, there you go. We move. No need to sound so sure. You never know. Things.
This is Nigeria.
No. Okay.
SDP will not win.
Let's move on though, but there you have it, information from the Guardian newspaper. UNILAG, speaking of information, is deploying digitalization for research. Now, recently we have been having conversations around education, seeing what our universities are contributing. And so I'm coming to you, Deveo, for this particular story. UNILAG say that they've authenticated their advocacy for globalization, they say, by taking a bold step towards digitalization, and it's coming in from the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Development Services, Professor Folashade Ogunshola. Deveo, your thoughts on the story?
Well, he didn't really explain in detail what this meant, but what they said is that very soon there will be Wi-Fi services available for the academia, that's the teaching staff, as well as the students. Now, that is a big step. Whenever Wi-Fi is introduced, you have the potential of multiplying your economic capacity. And we do hope that the students, our dear students, do use this Wi-Fi for learning and increasing their awareness rather than, the usual social media hopping up and down.
So no, you're judging students.
And then using it for whatnot. And we also hope that it's affordable so that it's cheap for them to access. And in some way, somehow, maybe the corporates can step in to provide the access devices from phones, laptops,
that's what I was going to
tablets.
ask, because we saw a conversation recently where the Times ranking put 3 different universities on the global map for top ranked universities in the world. UNILAG was nowhere amongst that, but when we open up the phone line to people to have conversations, a lot of students did mention that, listen, whenever they are given things by corporates, the lecturers just take over, they just take it. Brand new laptops given,
Well,
handed out to
I hope
lecturers
the
instead.
corporates are hearing so that they ensure that their good deeds reach the appropriation. Corruption should never be accepted, especially in our halls of our blue ivory towers.
Thank you very much. And just to round up, again, we see a scandal, disaster avoided barely with a fire and tanker. So scores escaped death as a tanker fire destroys vehicle. The Punch newspaper reports that many Lagos residents escaped death by a whisker on Tuesday after a fuel-laden tanker spilled its contents and went up in flames at the Barracks bus stop, Lagos Badagry Expressway. When will we see the end of such stories?
I'm just happy that no lives were lost at times, because I remember the last time it happened. There were
Tedala Bridge fire.
Yes. I'm glad no lives were lost. I commend the agencies, the emergency ones, for their quick responses. I think that's great. And I criticize the touts who were trying to steal the fuel. I remember being in a petrol station one day and watching someone smoking a cigarette. And this was a tout, and I was asking myself, yeah, cool, please go outside. If you want to die, take your cigarette outside. So I criticize them, and we are in such a situation as Lagosians. Please, health comes. Please have the numbers of all emergency agents. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We'll round up with messages very quickly because we haven't had time to take any. Chika Gina up on Twitter says, truth of the matter is that if this election, talking about the primaries, are to be carried out at time, Ambode will lose. Doesn't have the structure at the grassroots level, but at the height of it all is that his deputy and commissioners denied him, particularly Tagayombe, he says. IK, meanwhile, on WhatsApp says Lagos APC primaries exposed the weak underbelly system, which is also different from the modified open ballot system, aka option A4. There are videos where party chieftains clearly ensured that everyone queued for a particular candidate. Yikes, of course, that is problematic. Modupe says, yesterday we were moaning that Nigeria was broke and that the government should outsource its responsibilities on tertiary education. But with oil prices approaching $100 per barrel, ask Modupe. Modupe, you can't answer that.
All right, so well, there you have it. More great programming comes your way.
Indeed. Thank you to our analysts for coming in this morning. Find Deveo on Twitter at Deveo Okorie, at Mr. G Quest is Gbolahan, and at Adedunmade is Adedunmade Onibokun.
Have a great day, Lagos.
Excellent job. Well done. Sokwe is causing trouble now.
It's not. The people are voting. This is not Tinubu.
People are voting.